How's everyone feeling today? Yeah, good. First non-keynote session of the week. Thank you very much for coming and spending the time with us this morning. My name is John Maunder. I'm a product marketing manager on the Microsoft 365 team.
My name is John Gruszek. I'm also a product marketing manager on the same team as John here.
So we wanted to get started with a quick photo, actually. So it's a good photo op for you guys to be in. So if you don't mind, it would be great if you could look enthusiastic because we've got half a room and we want to make it feel like there's lots of people here.
You could probably just do it there.
3, 2, 1. Way!
Perfect.
That worked. It's good enough for us. Thank you. Again, welcome. Thank you. So this session here is, this is a 45-minute overview. We're going to be going through the recommended steps and processes for large-scale deployment of Windows 10 and Office 365 ProPlus. So we're going to be looking to describe existing tools and modern tools to help you make that shift over to the modern desktop. So the first question that we generally get asked is, well, why move? Why move from Windows 7 and Office 2010 over to Windows 10? Well, with Windows 10 and the Microsoft Intelligent Cloud, we have an improved set of processes and capabilities that help us alleviate the challenges of past operating system deployments, such as application compatibility. So now we have a lot more data, and that data can drive our actions. And this can really help us increase the confidence in how we do things, the efficiency and the speed of our desktop deployments. Security is also a huge reason for upgrading to Windows 10 Office 365 ProPlus. We have advanced security built into Windows 10 and Office 365 ProPlus and data protection capabilities as well. With this, leveraging the Microsoft 365 Cloud, we can take advantage of a cloud-connected PC that empowers users with a rich and secure workspace. So what is different compared to the last big desktop deployment? Well, number one is our directory services. Active Directory on premises, connected to Azure Active Directory, gives us a lot more capability in the tools that we use, especially when it comes to cloud-connected applications and services, such as Microsoft Intune, helping us deploy policies and take control of our PC desktop estate with a modern cloud-connected approach. Also, enabling Windows Autopilot. So if you have new PCs and you're working with hardware vendors, you can get your PCs delivered directly to your end users and have it transformed into business-ready state directly out of the box and have that user-driven. Azure Active Directory also enables us from an identity perspective to drive single sign-on for both on-premises and cloud-based applications. And that can be tied also into the likes of Windows Hello, so we can have a passwordless experience on our modern desktop. We also have conditional access control capabilities that we can enable on the modern desktop that actually allow us to take a look at the location, the user risk, the services that we're connecting to, and make a dynamic decision on whether we're allowed access to that content. Another reason is in-place upgrades. They're now our recommended approach for upgrading from previous versions of Windows. And with tools such as Configuration Manager and the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, we can leverage task sequencing at scale to get this job done. The Unified Extensible Firmware Interface, or UFI, along with 64-bit, also replaces BIOS to enable modern security features, and they're foundational to Windows 10. Co-management. We heard in Brad Anderson's keynote the uses and the advantages of co-management, but bringing Intune, that cloud-based device management platform, and configuration manager, where you have your existing investments in, together so you can start to introduce a modern approach to PC management. We also strongly recommend Office 365 ProPlus, so we can take advantage of Windows 10 and Office 365, the Office platform, with an always up-to-date mentality. So we can take advantages of the latest in productivity, the latest in security, and drive agility in our business. So John, why don't you take us through the deployment wheel?
Absolutely. I'll take the clicker from you here. So this is the deployment wheel. It's fairly recent. There was a nice tech community post and a few different communications when this graphic came out. Looks a little daunting, but I promise you there is a method to the madness here. And we're going to kind of go through the rest of this session around this wheel, and we'll talk about each of these steps individually, some of the tools that we use. We'll hop into some demos, et cetera. Really what the modern desktop deployment process or deployment wheel is, it's a holistic approach that we sat down with. I was a former consultant. John was a former TSP. We sat down with outside consultants as well and asked, hey, what is the real process in moving to the modern desktop? Which includes, as John mentioned, moving from off of Windows 7, off of legacy Office 2010, 2013, et cetera. What are the actual processes like? What are the roadblocks? What are the major issues that are preventing organizations from getting there? And as we started to go through this process, we started to create recommendations on how to actually get there, the tools to leverage that most customers have given us feedback on that they enjoy using, and that's how they use or how they've moved to the modern desktop successfully. So this is really a kind of an outside-in approach, working with, again, different customers and different organizations, and kind of collectively harnessing all this data that we've collected and shared it out now as kind of the deployment path. The first thing is device and app readiness. How many of you have moved to Windows 10 or Office 365 ProPlus already? Awesome. How many of you have used Windows Analytics? A little bit less. So the first thing really starts with device and app readiness, right? There's no way that you can possibly think about moving to Windows 10 or even upgrading your version of Office before you've done an inventory and assessment on what's out there. And it starts really with what we have in Windows Analytics. How many of you saw the desktop analytics announcement? Okay, good amount. So really what we're looking to do here is we have the endpoints already built into Windows 10 that we can start collecting and surfacing up to the Windows Analytics dashboard. Does an assessment of your critical line of business applications. You create your own custom portal. But now we're starting to go a step further, and we say, hey, we should be able to pull Office telemetry in here as well. There's currently an Office telemetry process. You have to deploy it out. It's an Excel spreadsheet that you collect everything in. We heard the feedback that said there should be one centralized dashboard. And we agree with it fully. If we're talking about moving to a modern desktop, which is Windows 10 and ProPlus together, you should be able to service and see all of your data in one centralized dashboard. So that's what desktop analytics is going to accomplish. It's going to be able to grab that data from the Office telemetry agent once you flip it on. And you're going to start seeing what are your critical plugins and add-ins. Are they compatible with the latest versions of Office? What are some of your heavy macro uses? And not just heavy macro usage, but we can start to really deep dive into that data to see possibly what are the most common used macros and how much, or excuse me, what is that population like? A lot of times when we get in with a customer and we start doing some remediation and assessment, we'll see that they might have 15% of their documents may be macro related. And we say, okay, so we're going to want to flag that one so we could do some remediation. But then what the nice part about desktop analytics is we can do a double click into that data and we see, okay, 15% of these files may have macros in them, but 90% of those 15% are all using the same macro. So all of a sudden we can make the smart decision to prioritize remediating that macro. And now we've essentially been able to move a massive part of our organization, or that 15% that we were originally concerned with. We've remediated them very quickly. And so now we just have that leftover 10%, which really works into the deployment groups and deployment phasing of migrating to the modern desktop. Part two is directory and network readiness. So at the very beginning, I guess I'll ask, how many of you have moved to Azure Active Directory? Or enabled it? Anyone running just fully only AAD? Awesome. This is the part where we really want to start looking at all of our objects, that they're going to move over correctly. For those of you that have set up Azure Active Directory, we have a tool called ID-Fix that's going to make sure everything will map over, et cetera. But what I want to focus on here is kind of the network readiness part. This is a very, very critical process that has been coming up more and more with customers, essentially giving us feedback that, hey, it's really hard to move to the cloud because our network isn't necessarily optimized. We have locations with satellite links or low bandwidth, and you're trying to get us to push 1, 2, 3 gig packages of updates. It's not applicable. So now kind of pivoting off of the Windows Analytics dashboard, what we've introduced is a network readiness page, a network assessment page. It starts to help you understand where some of your bottlenecks may be, how you can take advantage of things like delivery optimization with Windows, to help do peer-to-peer caching. There's also branch cache within Config Manager. We're really just trying to help you understand where some of your bottlenecks are, how you can help to remediate those. We also will give you dashboard data on how much bandwidth you've actually saved by using delivery optimization. So you can start to see those sites or locations that delivery optimization is having an enormous impact. Then you can start to surface some of those locations that, hey, maybe delivery optimization or branch cache or some type of peer-to-peer will have a better effect. Something that we haven't quite shared yet, but delivery optimization will be coming to Office 365 ProPlus as well for installation and updates. Engineering team is working through that right now. We'll make an announcement when it's publicly available. But again, being able to leverage peer-to-peer caching for not only installation, but updates as well. Pivoting off of that, once you've done your LOB app readiness, move into your directory and network readiness. The third part of the process is upgrading Office. So we call it Office and LOB app delivery. And specifically in this process, we're talking about Office 365 ProPlus. So I'll switch over to my machine here. And I'll dive straight into Everyone see that okay? In the back? Looks good? All right, thank you. One of the biggest pieces of feedback we got when we came out with Office 365 ProPlus was that customers were very unhappy that we got rid of the Office customization tool. Was anyone in that camp? Yeah? So we have brought it back. And now we've even brought back the ability to customize application preferences. And that's what we're going to walk through right here. And this is actually brand new. This version of the Office customization tool went live yesterday as of noon. So if you have played around with the OCT before, even up to about 2 days ago, you'll see that this is a completely different experience. What we really want to do is simplify the deployment experience, though. You'll also, for those of you that have Configuration Manager, if you're servicing ProPlus through Config Manager 1806, you actually will now see this as your experience as well. So a unified experience, whether you're creating your configuration XML file, which is essentially the instructions that tell ProPlus how to install, whether you're creating it through the browser here or you're actually creating it through Config Manager, you will have that same unified experience. So again, just real quick, I'll just have to put in an organization name. I won't go through this whole process, but as we click on Next, right, it's going to ask us the architecture. We'll go ahead and select our product suite here, so ProPlus. We can do our application exclusions right here through a nice UI, so no having to actually write out exclude app equals, in quotations, whatever app you would like to exclude. So I can just go ahead and switch off OneDrive here because we already have it installed as part of Windows 10. Click on Add. Select our channel down here. Semi-annual channel is what John mentioned, is going to provide updates every 6 months at a cadence. So I'll go ahead and leave that default. And we actually have a version here, so we can select the latest. Or we can go back about 8 to 10 versions that are supported builds, because we understand it's important to be able to deploy an older build, because most oftentimes you test against a build for 2-3 months. You want to deploy that build you tested with, right? So we support going back, but I'm going to go ahead and choose the latest build here. Go ahead and click on Next. Languages, I'll just do English US. And we can select any additional languages. One of the really cool things that we've done with Office as well now is we've really made it easier to be able to add languages on after the initial installation, essentially side-loading language packs. So what it helps you do is deploy a base set of languages to your end users, keep that package small, and then for your end users that do need to add on different language packs, They can either pull it down from config manager distribution points, they can pull it down from a local network share or DFS, or they can actually go to the CDN, or the Office CDN or Content Delivery Network, and pull it straight down from the cloud. Another experience that we've actually integrated is the fact that we can have you sideload those language packs. You can be going to a distribution point, and if that connection is not good, we can have you actually fail over to the Office CDN as an option. So more options ensuring that your end users aren't having any type of broken or failed experience. Again, I'll just go ahead and leave English selected here. We get into our installation settings here. Display level, icons of the taskbar. I'm just going to hop over this one. But you see here, I'm actually going to the Office CDN, or again, Content Delivery Network, to install our source files. We can change this here. We can go through config manager distribution points, network shares. However, it's optimized for your organization to deliver Office. We'll let you do that. Click on Next. Licensing and activation. ProPlus does use Office 365 subscription licensing. The one thing to call out here is, does anyone have a running ProPlus and then has Project and Visio MSI 2016? Sizable amount. So what we've done is initially there was a compatibility issue running MSI side by side in the same version as Office 365 ProPlus. So what we now allow you to do is actually deploy the Project and Visio versions in Click to Run, but you still use your KMS or Mac licensing. So that's how we've addressed that compatibility issue. We would love if you use the Office 365 subscription versions of Project and Visio, but we understand it's not applicable for everyone. So we do now allow you to actually, again, install the click-to-run versions of 2016 Project and Visio. You can still use your KMS or Mac, and they will be serviced with the ProPlus updates as well. See our application settings here. So these are all the preferences that we brought back. So I will just hop into a quick example here as project, right? And you can start to scroll down and see all the options here. Big thing to call out about this is we are not looking to bring back all 6,000 Office GPOs. What we've done is actually worked with customers and identified what are the most common and most important GPOs and settings to them. And you will see this list start to kind of be generated and be updated in a frequent cadence alongside the feedback that we collect from customers on what they care about, what GPOs may be missing, et cetera. So this is really kind of a evergreen approach to making sure that we're meeting customer demand. The last thing I'll call out is within this integration, we actually have a new feature as well called Remove MSI. And what this allows you to do is during the Office 365 ProPlus installation, it will find your MSI installs, so your Office 2010, 2013, et cetera, and it will remove those. Then it will go ahead and check and verify that that uninstallation was completely successful, and then it will go and start to layer down Office 365 ProPlus. All part of the Office deployment tool, which is the setup engine or setup.exe to actually install. So in the past, some of you might have had that kind of rough experience that you had to go and get Office Scrub, which was a VBS script, and then it would essentially wipe out everything on the device. So we got your feedback that, hey, it needs to be easier for us to move to ProPlus, and we agreed fully. I think John and I were big advocates of the Remove MSI feature. So again, now that is a simple line in the XML file, or again, the instructions for Office to install. All it's going to see is that Remove MSI feature, wipe out Office 2010 or whatever legacy version of Office you have on the machine, layer down the Office 365 ProPlus. One step further is we can actually have it verify or do a query on all of the language packs that the legacy version of Office is using, and then it will layer those down on ProPlus as well, right? So that like-for-like deployment. That's really what we're after here, is being able to service your end-user devices, and ideally all they should do is they should sit down after the update from Office 2010 or 13 to ProPlus. The only thing that should be changed is the UI in Office itself. And that's really what we're going after here. And the last part of the Remove MSI feature is we actually do allow you to leave standalone applications behind. So if you do want to leave behind your Project and Visio 2010 or 2013 installs, we support that. And if you have, let's say, and this is a common scenario, a finance department that still has a reliance on using that old 1997 workbook with macros that you have no idea how they're still working, we allow you to leave standalone applications behind as well. We never recommend a side-by-side deployment except for that scenario where it's a very small percentage of the population that needs one application. And we do allow for that scenario within the Remove MSI feature. So again, being able to give you that flexibility and the options to customize that deployment and also have that like-for-like install. So at the very end here, once you've built out your XML file, you can just go ahead and do an export. It's going to ask us to accept our licensing agreement, give it a name, and go ahead and export it out. The other cool thing is you can actually import it. So for those of you that have built out XML files already, at 5, 10, 15, I've seen customers with 25 different XML files here. You can import them, and then it will accept all the settings, and then you can start to customize the additional settings that might not have been available. Big thing about the OCT that's really helpful is I can't tell you how many times I've reviewed XML files that the problem with an Office deployment was a simple character issue, right? It is syntax, so it is very picky if you have an extra space or an extra comma. This just helps eliminate that human error. All right. Last part of it is I will switch over to the, what is that, 5? User files and settings migration. The big thing here we're going to briefly talk about before I hand it back over to John is the OneDrive known folder migration. Has anyone performed the OneDrive known folder migration yet? A couple people tentatively raise their hands. So I will hop into that real quick. Essentially what it's going to be able to do is through a GPO, it's going to have your end users, a couple different scenarios we can do, depending on how forcefully you want to have their known folders migrated into OneDrive. We can make it silently redirect in the background. We can prompt them. So let's go ahead and hop into that. Switch over here. And I know this is small, so I'll do a little zoom it here. The text is not great, but it just kind of highlights the GPOs that you have available here. So starting from the top down, we look at the one highlighted, prompt users to move Windows known folders to OneDrive. Simply would double click on this GPO or group policy object, enable it, and end users are going to get a nice UI screen that flashes up on their desktop that allows them to select their folders to migrate over to OneDrive. Very nice experience. Then we can start to look at additional customizations here. So prevent users from, silently redirect Windows known folders to OneDrive. So if you're an organization that likes to automate as much as possible and not let your end user touch anything, which is many organizations, we do allow that capability as well. So we allow you to silently redirect them in the background. We could also do some configuration. You could switch on OneDrive files on demand, which allows end users to only bring down to the device or cache on the device what's needed, which kind of going off that, we now announced OneDrive files on demand for Mac yesterday, which is a very big announcement as well. So these are all your OneDrive GPOs here that are easily configurable. Big highlight here is that all you have to do is switch on essentially three simple GPOs if you want to do a silent redirection in the background, and it's that easy, right? It starts moving over. If you have end-user devices that cannot redirect yet, we do have a GPO as well that will not let them redirect their known folders to OneDrive. So if anyone is in a sensitive space, certain regulated industries, we understand that you might not be able to store things in the cloud quite yet. So if you are worried about somehow end users moving things to OneDrive or trying to redirect folders, one of the top GPOs here actually prevents that from happening as well. So giving you the flexibility and options to make sure you're helping automate that known folder migration for your end user devices that need to go over there. And if you do have some of those devices air-gapped, well, if it's air-gapped, it's not even going to connect to the network. But again, sensitive PCs or devices that do not need to be storing in the cloud, we allow you to block that as well. So I will turn it back over here to John to talk about everyone's favorite subject right now on security and compliance.
Thanks, John. So in this part of the phase, we're going to be looking at some of the considerations we have for security and compliance and what to plan for when moving from Windows 7 and Office 2010 over to a Windows 10 Office 365 ProPlus environment. And security can be one of those common blockers that we have. So with the cloud, it does bring new security updates. With Windows 10, we have new features that are built into the platform as well. So one of the main considerations that we have, encryption. There's a lot of encryption software, third-party encryption software out there that actually don't support Windows upgrades. And what we find is that we need to get devices either unencrypted and re-encrypted. We do have within the Windows setup a command for reflect drivers that allow us to reference third-party encryption drivers. But it's not always as successful as we need it to be. With BitLocker within Windows 10 Pro, Windows 10 Education, and Enterprise, we do have that ability to suspend protection during that upgrade process and then re-enable it afterwards. So it's well worth the consideration to evaluate the encryption software that you have, making sure that it's compatible with your Windows upgrades. Also with antivirus. Now we do have great application compatibility with many of our apps going from Windows 7 to Windows 10. But the antivirus and anti-malware applications are actually a different beast because they work sometimes outside of the realms of standard software. They're trying to check operating system levels, checking registries and processes. And as such, we do see a lot of them fail when it comes to going through operating system upgrades for those applications. So we always advise that you take a look at, again, your antivirus solutions and make sure that they are fully supported with Windows upgrades. We do, of course, have built-in protection with Windows 10 and Windows Advanced Threat Protection, which would be very useful to evaluate during those conversations with security. One of the other areas that we need to consider is the fact that Windows 7 and Office 2010 security policies don't directly translate over to Windows 10 and Office 365 ProPlus. So as John mentioned, we're not looking to replicate every GPO setting that existed on Windows 7 and Office 2010. So we need to, again, evaluate the use of that. And we have the Microsoft Security Compliance Toolkit that can help you evaluate where you are with security compliance policies. We can take advantage of the Microsoft 365 platform with Windows 10, with Office 365, and with the enterprise mobility and security platforms. So here we start to take a look, as I mentioned before, with your identity and Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory becomes our control plane for identity, for devices, for our applications, and for our data. And we can automate access control decisions using conditional access control. Again, evaluating at that level of user risk, the network location, the device state, and also the applications and services that you're attempting to access. And they're all built into Azure Active Directory, and they'll apply directly to the end user. We also have device-level protections. Windows Hello, for example, device-level MFA, and inclusive of biometrics. So either using your face or your fingerprint. There are built-in controls to some of the devices on the market today, and you can get even FIDO-certified USB keys that you can leverage to ensure your compliance, security and compliance regulations are met. Secure boot to ensure that you have boot integrity and code integrity using virtualization security, virtualization-based security. Also, credential guard to prevent that credential theft. Exploit guard to reduce the attack surface of running applications. And application guard, which helps isolate programs that are running in the browser for browser-based attacks. These kind of security enhancements are foundational to Windows 10. And they also use UEFI, and they also use 64-bit architectures. And these, again, are foundational to Windows 10. You won't find this level of security in Windows 7 platforms. Some of the other security advantages of Office 365 ProPlus is the built-in data protection to the Office applications. And when we think about security compliance and data protection, it's not just about enforcement. It's also about end-user education. And inside of these applications, we have pop-up bars that are here in the ribbon to help your users understand when the data that they're working with is sensitive. So we can help them understand what they're working with and also allow IT or security compliance to be alerted on and to report on any issues that may be happening in terms of data protection and information protection. Within the Office 365 platform, also within Outlook, we have things like safe links that's allowing us to do a security check on the URL before in session. So at the time of click, when a user clicks that URL and goes through to that website, we'll do a real-time check to see if it's a good or a known bad website. And we also have safe attachments that run through scanning of the attachments that come through on email and allow us to do checks and remove that potential risk from our inboxes.
And the one thing I just add really quickly there is the key point there is the real-time assessment, right? Because we've seen surface attacks that have come that's a URL that then gets redirected or changed. So it's very, very important that when we do these checks on safe attachments and safe links, it is every time that user is clicking it, we are doing a check against it. And we do allow you to whitelist or blacklist different URL sites. So if there's something that keeps getting flagged as not being safe, that could be an internal or intranet site, we do allow you to whitelist it. And we also allow you to blacklist things that as soon as they click, we don't even go ahead and do an assessment on it because you've already specified that it should be blocked. So I think the real-time assessment is very key and the big solution there.
Cool. And then finally, with mobile device management, with Microsoft Intune, we can take a look at bringing Intune into play with Configuration Manager using co-management and start to take a look at requirements for that device to be enrolled and registered and managed by our IT teams and our platforms, making sure that we don't have at-risk devices or unknown devices accessing corporate data. So the next part of our phase is operating system deployment and feature updates. So with this, regardless of whether it's a bare metal deployment, a PC refresh, or a computer replacement altogether, we have options for OS deployment. And really the goal here around actual deployment is to avoid disruption to our end users and reduce risk to the business and downtime for those users. So we're able to leverage our user communications and user training that we'll come to in one of the next phases, and we can talk to you about how you can help prepare your end users for that refresh. But ultimately, we want to give them the best experience. But at the same time, we want you to leverage the tools and the platforms that you already have investment in and help you connect modern approaches to desktop deployment. So this is really about getting OS images deployed, your older versions of Windows upgraded, and start to introduce new modern approaches using things like Windows Autopilot. So the tools that we have available, of course, for image creation and deployment are Configuration Manager, the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, and within here we have task sequencing that will be heavily leveraged. So we're able to automate at scale enterprise upgrades and enterprise image deployments. So with a bare metal install where we're replacing or where we are deploying an OS to a clean disk, or we are re-imaging an existing device, but we're not keeping any of the data. With the computer refresh, we're maintaining that user state, where we can either keep it on disk or restore it afterwards. And with a computer replacement, of course, we are backing up our data to a central location, potentially using the known folder move within OneDrive, and then redeploying that data after the fact. We can also leverage upgrade task sequencing, and we can do this in Configuration Manager or with the MDT. So we're able to run an in-place upgrade at enterprise scale. Whilst in-place upgrades don't require task sequencing, it does help us to automate that process. And using an in-place upgrade, we are using the Windows setup.exe to run pre-installation checks for known compatibility issues, and also ensure that it can preserve that user state, removing only what isn't compatible for that move. So we also have some modern deployment methods as well. If we take a look at new PC devices that you may be purchasing, Windows Autopilot can help you transform a device directly from the vendor into a business-ready state and have an experience that's user-driven. So that device is ordered from the vendor or a third-party distributor or reseller, and it's being delivered directly to the end user. And again, it could be directly to the office, or it could be to a home or another place of remote working. The user can open up the laptop, use our Azure Active Directory credentials to sign in. It can run through multi-factor authentication using a known telephone number or an authenticator app on the phone. And once authenticated, automatically enroll that device in Azure AD and push through into automatic MDM enrollment, where we can then deliver the appropriate policies and settings down to that device, as well as applications. We have a new enrollment status page that helps us hold the user in an area that until all of the policies and settings are deployed down onto that device. And this is one of the only ways that we can get a user onto a secure and compliant device before they get access to the desktop. So that's actually a very powerful way to ensure security and compliance. We also need to take a look at how we can use dynamic provisioning with things like Windows 10 subscription activation. We can upgrade a Windows 10 Pro OS up to a Windows 10 E3 or E5 license plan using the cloud. So all you need to do as administrators is select the user and the license type that they are activating against, and Azure Active Directory will activate that platform and bring that OS up to the appropriate enterprise level. We can also use provisioning packs to deploy settings and policies to that device. In terms of planning your deployment, we need 3 groups. The first group would be an early adopter group, and generally this would be IT or your enthusiastic IT users. This is a place you can test communications, learn troubleshooting, and also learn and start driving some automation in your processes. And these people are generally going to be your future champions. Also, we need to take a look at your pilot group. And this would be a diverse set of users spanning multiple devices and hardware types. And ideally, you're working with the business there to understand business timelines, such as end of quarter or end of year, things that you might need to avoid in terms of an OS deployment. And then your broad users, where you're going to be pushing your major user communications to, and actually staging a rollout that's acceptable to the size of IT help desk and the level of help desk tickets that you can manage at a particular time, so you can throttle that level. We also have Windows as a service and Office as a service. So this is a new servicing model that we have in place that helps us simplify the update processes for staying current. And it really allows us, again, to enable the best productivity and security update experiences for us. So there's a couple of different update types that we have here. We have a feature update, and we also have a quality and security update with reliability and bug fixes. So the cadence for this, of course, for both Windows and Office, the feature updates semi-annual, around March and September timeframes, and the quality and security updates are monthly, and they're cumulative. And what I mean by cumulative is that in the past, our patches were, you had to install one by one, and you always had to have a previous version of a patch before you could go to the next one. Cumulative means that every patch that gets released contains everything that the previous one did, plus more. And this means that you're only ever one update away from being fully patched and fully up to date. With Office 365 ProPlus only, we do have a monthly feature update cadence as well. This means that you can take advantage of the latest features in Office on a regular basis if you have those advanced IT users who really want the latest features at that particular moment in time. And why do we want to stay up to date so regularly? Well, mainly it's the security risk. It's the threat landscape out there. We need to make sure that we can stay up to date and stay ahead of our security threats. Sometimes this is quite high level. Maybe we're just adding in new data protection features. And sometimes it's foundational to the operating system, like virtualization-based security. So this is why we have regular updates, because we need to stay ahead of that. But also for business agility, where productivity and those new features help avoid shadow IT. Will help avoiding the marketing department or the finance department go and buy a new product that's actually in office, but they don't realize it yet because they're running on something that's 3 or 4 years old. And of course, when we think about the updates being cumulative, it does mean that they get larger. But we have express updates in both Windows Services Update Service, Windows Update for Business, and we have now brought express updates to Configuration Manager, allowing us to take advantage of Delta updates. And within Office, this is Delta binary compression. So what express updates and Delta binary compression are essentially doing is taking a look at what we already have as our patch and OS and application level, and finding out what's new, and only taking what's new. So we don't have to deploy that entire update and all the bits down to that device. And finally, user communications. So of course, we do need to plan for user communications. This is critical to business success. Giving them, number one, a heads up of what's coming down the line, not only in terms of change and your change management, so giving them the awareness, but also giving them the education on what they can use to be most productive. And again, we should be using our IT early adopters, our first group of IT users, enthusiasts, to find out what that might be. And also test that with our pilot users to see if that's really landing and resonating across disparate various business groups. So when you roll out to your broad users, they get what is essentially a refined set of information that makes them the most productive and helps educate them as to what's happening and when. We do have some great resources available at Microsoft. Number one, we have our productivity library. This is a set of templates that's geared towards business outcomes and business scenarios that your users will best understand. So you can go to the productivity library on our Microsoft site and check out those scenarios, and you can package those up. There are not just written, but there are also video content that you can leverage. And also the Microsoft Fast Track program. We have a modern desktop area, and we have a lot of content that you can leverage there for your end users. And that Microsoft Fast Track team, you're likely to be eligible to use Microsoft Fast Track to drive your deployment and to drive your adoption. So you can actually see how Microsoft engineers can help you get adopted with the modern desktop. John, anything to add on?
No, I think as far as user comms and training pretty much wraps it all up, but it has to be threaded, as John mentioned, throughout the entire process, right? The more communication we see that organizations provide to their end users, typically the more successful whether it's an OS upgrade or whether it's just a simple Office update, the more you can communicate to end users what's happening, when it's happening, what they need to go and do. Utilize the productivity library to build a wiki or an FAQ site. Again, the more that you can communicate with end users and tell them what's happening, the more that you could reduce those help desk calls.
So that brings us to a very brief, the end of our very brief session, 45 minutes. Thank you again so much for coming to our session today, this morning. We wish you a great Ignite moving forward. So
I will add one thing really quickly. If you go to aka.ms/how-to-shift, it will take you exactly to all of our new docs content. So this is actually a step-by-step process, and this is all the boring, geeky, technical, super deep migration path details. So we have instructions or a kind of a write-up for each step that John and I just went through. So a corresponding intro video as well. This is where all that content now lives, and it will be continually updated. We just went live with it last week. So this really ties everything together as far as getting that super deep dive information. But yes, I just wanted to throw that in there. aka.ms/how-to-shift is the quick URL to get on there. And again, I will kind of echo what John just said. Thank you so much for being here, and happy Ignite. Got 4 more days ahead of you.
cool, thank you.